The Western is one of the oldest and most storied film genres, starting during the silent film era and gradually growing in popularity until reaching their height during the golden age of Hollywood. During this period, an estimated 140 Westerns were made every year. These classic Westerns were grounded in the conventional literary conflict of good versus evil. They featured heroes who were typically hyper-masculine lawmen of integrity and principle, saving a virtuous woman or town from ruthless outlaws or negatively portrayed Native Americans. Being a quintessential American art form, the Western is deeply rooted in American ideals. Independence, justice, capitalism, democracy, and expansionism are all key themes in early Westerns. But as the political and social climate changed in the 60s, people began questioning these American ideals. The style and themes of Westerns also changed, as their creators too were questioning and critiquing these ideals.
Hang 'em.
These revisionist Westerns, along with the European-produced spaghetti Westerns, viewed the American West through a darker lens. The lines between heroes and villains blurred, with films featuring anti-hero outlaws who often operate in a gray area rather than following the stark black and white code of John Ford's earlier Westerns. One of the most unique, influential, but often overlooked films of this time is Sergio Corbucci's 1968 film, The Great Silence. Sergio Corbucci began his career around the same time as the better-known Sergio Leone. They both had the idea to adapt the samurai film Yojimbo into a Western. Leone got there first with Fistful of Dollars. Corbucci would later get his chance with the seminal Django, which inspired several unofficial sequels and Quentin Tarantino's 2015 Django Unchained. Corbucci's dark and brutally violent films differed from Leone's brighter and more optimistic films. Distraught over the deaths of revolutionaries Che Guevara and Malcolm X, Sergio Corbucci was inspired to make a politically charged Western that critiqued capitalism and authoritarian power. The film follows mute bounty hunter Silence, played by French actor Jean-Louis Trintignant, as he arrives in a snowy frontier town in Utah just before the Great Blizzard of 1899. There, he takes up the cause of a group of farmers who have been forced off their land and into the snowy wilderness to live as bandits. They are hunted by ruthless bounty hunters led by the sadistic Tigrero, played wonderfully by German actor Klaus Kinski.
Se mi dici dov'è questo ti puoi salvare. Non lo conosco. No. Lo conosci benissimo, stava con te in montagna.
Silence is hired by a young widow, Pauline, to avenge her dead husband, who was killed and murdered by Tigrero, and the corrupt banker Henry Pollicut who backs them.
È lui che io voglio morto, voglio la sua vita, per la vita di mio marito. C'è un uomo che fa tremare i cacciatori di taglie quando lo incontrano, lo chiamano Silenzio, perché dopo che è passato lui, resta soltanto il silenzio e la morte.
The Great Silence subverts traditions and stands out in a variety of memorable ways. The most obvious visual factor is its setting. The Great Silence is one of the few Westerns to utilize a snowy landscape as its setting, and it does so very effectively. The impending blizzard adds a looming danger to the film. Much like the sweltering deserts of most traditional Westerns, the snow emphasizes not just the harshness of Western environments, but the people that inhabit them too. The film opens on Silence and his horse trudging through the thick snow. The wind howls around him. When Silence kills, his target's blood splatters across the blankets of snow like paint on a canvas. Cinematographer Silvano Ippoliti captures these violent scenes in vivid detail, along with the stunning snow-covered mountains that surround it. His cinematography is gritty and utilizes the numerous zooms and close-ups so common in spaghetti westerns. Unfortunately, the quality of the film stock used to shoot the film was poor or has not held up over the years, which leads to some uneven coloring and picture quality throughout the film. It gives the film a slightly unpolished and hurried aesthetic, which actually plays into the film's themes in the end. A movie this brutal and pessimistic shouldn't be beautiful. Ippoliti's cinematography and the snowy setting help emphasize the film's philosophy. These visual elements would once again inspire Quentin Tarantino in the making of a film, 2015's The Hateful Eight.
Got room for one more?
The Western genre is known for its cowboys being the strong, silent type. The Great Silence takes this a step further by giving us a main character who is in fact mute. As a young boy, Silent's parents were killed and his vocal cords severed by bounty hunters, leaving him mute and with a deep hatred of bounty hunters.
Mamma! Mamma!
Il bambino parlerà.
No. Non parlerà più.
Silence may be cut from the same cloth as some of Eastwood's characters, but Jean-Louis plays him with a tenderness and melancholy that the man with no name lacks. Silence justifies his violence by never shooting first. He goads his rivals into drawing first and then strikes them down before they can shoot with his German-made semi-automatic Mauser pistol. Mauser is an unusual gun to find in a Western film, especially when viewed next to the more conventional Colt Peacemakers carried by Tigrero and the rest of the characters in the film. This weapon gives Silence an unfair advantage, depending not on his shooting prowess, but technology instead. Standing against Silence is the ruthless Tigrero. Tigrero is Silence's equal opposite. They both kill for money and are extremely efficient, but the only code of conduct Tigrero follows is to get paid. Given the choice of bringing in his target dead or alive, Tigrero will always choose the latter. He shows no sympathy for the townsfolk who have been driven off their land and forced into banditry to survive. To him, they are only price tags.
Portarseli appresso vivi, coste. Per questo la legge prevede l'altro caso. E poi sarebbe troppo pericoloso. È gente contro Dio, contro il genere umano, contro la morale, contro l'ordine costituito. Ucciderli è un'opera buona, credetemi.
Klaus Kinski plays Tigrero with a sadistic charm. He's a flamboyant devil, riding into town keeping track of collected souls in a notebook. Tigrero brings a charisma to the Great Silence, and Silence a quiet intensity. The heart of the film, though, lies with the young widow Pauline, played by Vonetta McGee. That's not to say she falls into the traditional Western character trope of innocent schoolmarm or sinful prostitute. No, she isn't used as a simple symbol to represent virtue or immorality. She's a fully developed character with needs and agency, making her a rarity in the Western genre. After Tigrero kills her husband, a devastated Pauline vows vengeance against him. She hires Silence to kill him. Pauline moves the story forward here rather than standing idly by.
Domani, dopodomani al massimo, vi darò I soldi. Solo il tempo di procurarmeli. Si tratta di Tigrero, il cacciatore di taglie. Deve essere arrivato in città con voi. Ha ucciso mio marito.
Pauline also refuses to let those around her dictate her sexuality. She refuses the sexual advances of the powerful and corrupt Henry Pollicut.
Andate all'inferno!
And later takes control of her budding romance with Silence. The love scene between Pauline and Silence is very powerful on multiple fronts. First off, it's a love scene between a black woman and a white man, a rarity in film at the time, let alone westerns. It's shot romantically rather than obscenely. Pauline moves the encounter further here, rather than being controlled by silence. Pauline maybe doesn't even love silence, but is rather reaching out in an attempt to replace the absence of her husband, both of them connecting in their loneliness. It was uncommon to see a love scene this emotionally fraught in a Western. This is a scene where Ennio Morricone's beautifully moody score really stands out, with its mournful violins and cascading vocal harmonies, surrounding silence and Pauline in their moment of passion. Morricone takes a more traditional and subtle approach with the music in The Great Silence, compared to some of his more familiar scores with Sergio Leone. Gone are his stampeding rhythms and coyote-like whistles. Instead, we get scenes backed by romantic melodies and others interrupted by the squeal of a flute, warning us of an outburst of violence. Morricone's score is at times intensely anxious and suspenseful, and at others sweeping and heartfelt. One of the most interesting and unique elements of The Great Silence is its ending. If you haven't seen the film and don't want to know how it ends, I recommend stopping the video here. It's available to rent on several streaming services and for free through Canopy. Corbucci finishes The Great Silence with a truly subversive and bleak ending. Toguro takes the outlaw farmers hostage in order to lure Silence out of hiding. Silence goes to the saloon to confront Toguro. We're about to get the classic Western showdown we crave. Just as we think Silence is about to win the day, one of Toguro's men shoots him from the shadows, injuring his hand. Then Toguro finishes the job. He murders Silence, Pauline, and all of the hostages before leaving town. Corbucci wanted an ending that represented his current feelings about the political and social turmoil around him. He wanted an ending where the good guys die in vain, an ending where greed and corruption prosper.
No! Pietà! Non vogliamo morire!
Ci toccano 2 tagli a testa.
In an interview with a German magazine, Corbucci stated that he believed that the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, and Che Guevara actually helped further their causes and resulted in widespread condemnation of violence. Silence's death serves the same purpose. Though not as epic in scale as The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or universally acclaimed as The Searchers, The Great Silence's reputation and influence has grown steadily over the years, thanks in part to becoming more widely available in America and Quentin Tarantino's praises and homages in his films. The Great Silence's unique setting and characters, phenomenal score, gritty style, and its subversive twists on the genre make it the most radical revisionist Western of its time.